All righty, we are now recording, everybody. So like to call this meeting to order at 5:31 p.m. The meeting has been properly noticed and posted according to law. Present, we have Wendy Smith. I'm sorry? Oh, present, we have Wendy Smith, Cara Espera, Paul Heinrich, Mike Polson. As committee members, we also have Inspector Burris, and I believe, Jonathan has just come on. So hello, Jonathan.
Hello, all. Appreciate you taking the time. Hope you're staying safe in the snow.
Yep. Wendy, do you have the agenda?
I do.
Okay.
So we can go ahead and get started. Let's see, Mike, we can see you now, just FYI. Okay.
Good.
So this is the meeting of the Board of Appeals for January 9th, 2024. A meeting packet with our agenda has been distributed to the group. First things first is our consideration of meeting minutes from our meeting on September 12th. That's item number 4 on our agenda. Of the board members, are there any proposed corrections to the minutes as they are drafted?
No.
Okay, hearing no corrections, and I have no corrections either. The minutes are approved as they're drafted. All right, moving right along. For the purposes of our applicant here, how this will typically work is that we'll first go over the standards by which the board will review this request for a variance. We'll start with that standard, and then we'll take a statement from the village, a representative of the village. Then we'll take a statement from the applicant for the variance. And then if there are others attending this meeting, interested parties, we may take a statement from any other interested party like a neighbor. And then the board will deliberate, close the testimony portion of this meeting and go into deliberation on the request. So we'll start first with reviewing the standards by which the board will abide during this meeting. In the absence of our village attorney, I'll briefly go over the standards the board will use for this variance request. So pursuant to our municipal code, the Board of Appeals can hear appeals from persons that are aggrieved by any administrative order, decision, or determination, and may hear and grant applications for variances and exceptions to the zoning provisions of our municipal code. So in consideration for an application for a variance, which is at the subject here, the board may hear and grant an appeal as such that it's not contrary to public interest, where, owing to special conditions, literal enforcement will result in practical difficulty or unnecessary hardship. So that the spirit and purpose of our municipal code on zoning will be observed and the public safety, welfare, and justice is secured. Okay. So pursuant to Municipal Code Section 535-58, no variance shall be granted by the board unless it finds all of the following. So the 2 following elements must be satisfied in order for us to grant a variance. 1, there must be exceptional, extraordinary, or unusual circumstances or conditions applying to the lot, parcel, or structure that do not apply generally to other properties in the same district. And granting of the variance would not be so general or recurrent of a nature as to suggest that the municipal zoning code chapter should be changed. And the second element that we have to find is that the variance will not create substantial detriment to any adjacent property and will not materially impair or be contrary to the purpose and spirit of the municipal zoning code chapter or in the public interest. Okay. So those are our standards by which we'll abide in hearing this request. So in consideration for item number 6 on our agenda, this is the request to appeal. So I technically think this is a request for a variance, and the petition filed by the applicant is a request for a variance. So I'm going to phrase it as a request for a variance of Village Code 225-8B, subsection 2, to allow installation of a 5-foot fence in the front yard at Residential Properties 4100 North Ardmore Avenue. And we'll begin consideration of this matter by asking for a statement from a representative of the village. Justin
Okay.
or Tim, do either of you want to provide us with a statement?
Yes.
Would you be doing it, Justin?
Uh-huh.
Okay, can you raise your right hand, please? Do you affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah, so on September 11th, 2023, Inspector Tim Kep made contact with the property owner, notifying them that a building permit is required for the installation of the fence, and that the height of the fence in its current location was a violation of village code. Some initial notices had gone out as we had the former owner's information. So that's why we say on September 11th is when that first contact was made. Then on October 11th, a second notice was sent out to the owner that detailed those code requirements. On October 16th, 2023, the village received the building permit application for the fence, which was denied on the basis that it exceeds the 4-foot maximum height requirement for a fence in the front yard. On November 11th, the village received the Board of Appeals application from the property owner. The applicable regulations again are 2258B subparent 2. It says all fences erected or constructed in the front setback area established under the zoning code 535-19E5 shall be limited to a height of no more than 4 feet, provided that on corner lots, and this says on corner lots where adjacent to a public walk or street, all fences erected or constructed to a height of more than 4 feet shall conform to the building setbacks. The setback provision is that the front setback is a minimum of 25 feet or the average of the existing setbacks on the side of the street where the property is located between the two closest intersecting streets, whichever is greater. We have a map in the packet that kind of shows it's obviously a curved street and things there. But looking at the 4100 block of Ardmore, the average front yard setback is give or take 36.5 feet. And the house at 4100 Ardmore is set back 23 feet on the northwest corner, 16, almost 17 feet on the southwest corner. So again, the minimum setback would be 25 feet and allow a fence no greater than 4 feet in that front yard setback area. So within the packet, we have the initial work without permit notice that was sent, and then the building permit application, the denial letter, the Board of Appeals application, and then the number of pictures and parcel maps.
All right, thank you, Justin. Members of the board, any questions for Inspector Burris at this time?
I take it, Justin, this is Mike Paulson. I take it,
Oh, you
Mike, it
muted.
Mike.
appears that you're on two platforms.
Got muted.
Yeah, can you mute the
sorry,
one? Yep.
sorry. And I think I'm getting an echo. I hope it's not bothering anyone else. Justin, I assume from the documentation that the only issue here is whether a 4-foot or 5-foot fence is permitted in this location. We don't have any other setback or like 3 feet from the sidewalk or any other issue at all.
Correct. Yep.
So it's whether it should be 4 feet or 5, or should we grant a variance to go to 5 feet?
Correct, yes. And the owner can confirm, I believe he had a survey conducted after the fence was installed, and the survey shows that the fence is on their property, so it is strictly just the height, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, other questions for Inspector Burris by other members of the board? Hearing none. Thank you, Inspector Burris. We'll proceed now to the applicant, Mr. Parker. If you'd like to provide a statement, our clerk, Joy Harrell, will swear you in.
Mr. Parker, can you raise your right hand, please? Do you affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right,
Go
well,
ahead.
Mr. Parker, if you'd like to provide a statement, keeping in mind that we are looking for specific information on how we can grant this variance, specifically how the lot or your parcel of property is different from others that might justify the existence of a 5-foot fence over the zoning required 4-foot fence. So you can proceed and provide as much information as you'd like.
Thanks so much, Wendy. Thank you, everyone else, for taking the time today. I wanted to also thank Tim, who's been going back and forth with me. To be completely transparent, I'm new to the area, so it is certainly on me that I didn't do my due diligence prior to construction. I was unaware of those rules, but had I done the due diligence, I would have known. That being said, the first question of the granting requirements or variance Board of Appeals packet asks, describe how hardship due to physical limitations, including lot shape, lot size, neighboring uses may impact this. And I think that our property checks all three of those. So if I may, I'd love to just share my screen if that's allowed.
I don't mind that. Toya, is he able to share his screen?
That would be, I'm not sure. Can you see if you can share it? Because I can't, because I'm on my phone. Yep, we have it. Yep, go ahead.
Okay,
Thank you.
and appreciate you providing this in the packet. I was actually working on one already. But if you see here, my cursor is currently at our humble abode at 4100 Ardmore. And you'll see it's on that curved street that you referenced earlier. We have Ardmore coming down here where it intersects with Elmdale. And then this red stripe is an active alleyway that services 8 properties that are all multifamily home units. So we have those 8 properties that are going across the right of the home. And across the street on Ardmore, we have apartment buildings, 6 apartment buildings here, and an additional apartment building here. Now, as you can imagine, that provides quite a bit of both vehicle and personnel traffic. It's a very, very active street. And we had moved in one day prior to my wife being induced for our first daughter, and me not doing my due diligence. My first order of business was to put up a fence because I travel extensively for work, and I wanted a place where my family, daughter and dog and partner could feel safe. So that's why I did the 5-foot fence. I kept it see-through to be conscious of any emergency protocols, i.e. I know oftentimes in neighborhoods and districts, if you do an unsee-through wood fence, that really that can be restricted by height. This one, I did not know of the 4 to 5 foot discrepancy. So again, apologies on that. But I do see, or I do think that our property is uniquely positioned, whereas you'll see on this screenshot, there really aren't any single family dwelling homes in this area, which means these streets are constantly lined with cars. There's late night parties going on over here. Lots of foot traffic, the neighbors walking. And I will say the majority of the neighbors who have walked by or passed the property have complimented the fence and the work we're doing on the property. Shorewood was the one place my partner wanted to end up, and I'm just gonna stop sharing my screen so y'all can see me. But Shorewood was the one area we wanted to move to raise our kid. And as you know, the properties do not stay on the market long. This property, however, went on the market for an extensive amount of time. It was pulled from the market and then replaced on the market for over 100 days, I believe. And the average house stays on the market in Shorewood, last time I checked, for 63 days. And I believe this is due to the activities going on around the home and within the neighborhood. Now, we're fairly on the outskirts of Shorewood, but we love Shorewood so much, and we really just want to improve the property value. So, the second criteria I believe you mentioned was no detriment to public interest. And I don't see a world in which a 5-foot see-through fence detriments public interest in any way. And if anything, it adds value both to the property and to the surroundings. And I'll also open the floor to questions if that's allowed, but that's my piece, and thanks for the time.
Okay, great. Thank you. We will open it up to board members if they have questions for our applicant. Please feel free to ask Mr. Parker now.
If I may, Mr. Parker, if you had known that that there was a 4-foot height limit on the fence, would you have installed a 4-foot fence at that time?
Great question, Mike. I believe I probably still would have reached out to the village to see if I could install a higher fence. I would have loved to install a 6-foot fence, to be honest. Just in terms of safety for my family, as I mentioned, I travel quite extensively and they're home alone. 4-foot fences, I don't think are really a security measure. Whereas 5 foot with motion lights, that at least provides enough time if someone were to be jumping over. And I know it's a fairly low crime area, but we all know things happen. So I still would have reached out and fought for this variance had I known prior, but I would have done it the right way and reached out prior to the construction. And again, that was my misstep there.
And
go ahead, Mike.
Go ahead,
Sorry.
go ahead, Wendy. I think you're probably going to ask the same question I am, so go ahead.
Well, maybe. I have a question about, so looking at the neighborhood, kind of bird's eye view of the neighborhood, it looks like there are multiple houses that run alongside these apartment buildings, multiple homes in this area of Shorewood that have busy alleyways. And I know probably many people on this call live on a house with a busy alleyway, including myself. There are a couple of other properties in this general area that are corner lots, just like yours. So what is it about your lot that justifies having a 5-foot fence over a 4-foot fence? And I'm thinking about, if your neighbors all want to have 5-foot fences, whether we are putting ourselves in a position of having to grant those variance requests simply because they are next to a busy street and an apartment complex. So perhaps you can clarify, how is your property different from other similarly situated houses nearby?
Yeah. So as mentioned, there are other corner lots. There are corner lots on alleyways. One thing I didn't mention in just the lot shape and lot size is, our property doesn't have what you'd call a traditional backyard or side yard, if any yard. It really only has the front yard, which is, Wisconsin summers are lovely and we certainly want to utilize those. But I'm understanding you're conscious of you granting this variance, creating a snowball effect perchance of other neighbors wanting to do the same thing. And again, for me, it comes down to safety. 4 to 5 feet, I'd love to know, and I was speaking with Bart as well in an email comm with Tim, but I don't know if I asked this question, but, is there a historical reason that the fences have been capped at 4 foot versus 5 foot? Because to me, it seems fairly negligible. They feel very similar. Once you're above 3 feet, the 4 to 5 foot gap doesn't seem like a great increase. So I'm not sure if there's a historical reason why it's been capped at 4 feet. But I mean, our lot shape, it's on a corner lot across from multiple apartment buildings, active alleyway, and no existing backyard.
Thank you. Any other questions from board members? Mike, did I ask your follow-up question?
You did.
Okay. Hearing no other questions. Any final statements, Mr. Parker, that you'd like to provide?
None at all, except for the fact that everyone's been very welcoming. We meet someone new every day. We're absolutely loving it and excited for the first snow of the year that's currently coming down. So I appreciate you moving this remote just in terms of safety, and appreciate y'all jumping on.
Okay, great. Yes, and thank you, Toya, for moving this to virtual. Okay, so at this point, hearing no other comments, and I don't believe that we have any other attendees, other interested parties. I don't see any neighbors on the call. Toya, are you aware of any input or opinion from neighboring properties on this matter?
I have not received any written comments, and there are no other people online.
Okay. Hearing no other questions for either the village or applicant, we'll go ahead and close the testimony portion of this hearing, and we'll move to deliberation amongst the board. So that's where board members will kind of look at our criteria and discuss whether we think this meets the criteria for granting a variance. Mr. Parker, you're free to stay on and listen in. But at this point, we're not taking any additional evidence or testimony, and we'll just chat amongst ourselves. Okay. Of the board, anyone have any preliminary thoughts on whether this meets our criteria? And just as kind of a reminder, we're looking for kind of extraordinary or unusual circumstances applying to the lot that do not apply more generally to other neighboring properties, and a lack of any kind of detriment to adjacent properties or contrary to public opinion or public interest. So any thoughts?
I'll jump in, but I certainly want to give everyone else an opportunity to speak
Sure.
first. I can understand why Mr. Parker wants a fence and have no problem with the placing of a fence in his front yard, as given the location of the lot and the shape of the lot. It's perfectly understandable he would want a fence. The problem is our village code, regardless of the reason, says 4 feet. The explanation that he gave for, and we don't, as a board member, as a board, have the ability to change that 4-foot requirement because we think it's antiquated or inadequate or whatever. We only have the power that's permitted by the law under our ordinances to find something related to that particular location that is so different, so extraordinary, that 4 foot just won't work, and that it must have a 5-foot fence. And by moving from 4 feet to 5 feet, we're not setting a precedent that's going to apply to anywhere else in the village. That's basically what the law says. So we're very much constrained. I could perfectly understand that 5 feet would offer more security than 4 feet, but I don't find, at least in my opinion, anything compelling about that difference, that given the nature of this particular lot and its location, that the difference between 4 and 5 feet would be either exceptional, extraordinary, or somehow unusual from other lots, single-family lots in the village, adjacent or near multifamily locations, alleyways, or busy streets. So that, while I can certainly understand your preference for 5 feet, in my view, I can't vote for a variance because I don't think the law permits me under the facts as you've presented them. So that's my 2 cents.
Other commentary?
I
Uh,
tend to agree. I just, I really sympathize with the situation here, but I'm fairly concerned with opening a can of worms in regards to granting other variances of this sort. I also, just looking at the pictures provided, there are a lot of single family homes. I don't see any other ones pictured with fences at all there. So I'm just not quite sure that the location itself would qualify as, extenuating circumstances that would warrant granting variance of this nature.
Yeah, and I tend to agree with Kara and Mike on the same point. I know that we've worked to maintain a consistent approach with granting variances and looking for something very unique to the property. And some of us have, I use this example kind of to explain when we grant a variance as to when we don't. Prior request for a variance where there was a dangerous condition on the property such that the property owner wanted to prevent people from accessing the property and erecting a 6-foot fence. And this was a property used by pedestrians to kind of hop the fence and go down kind of ravine to access the beachfront area of Shorewood. In that circumstance, it was, understandable that that's a very unique aspect of this particular property, that it kind of creates an avenue, a dangerous avenue for people to access the property. In this circumstance, the property, I think, lacks the unique characteristic in that way, such that I do worry, just like Kara does, about allowing neighboring properties to erect greater than 4-foot fences in the same general area. And like Mike said, I just don't think that the board has the authority to override the municipal zoning code unless we meet those specific requirements. Cole, any thoughts?
I think I'm in agreement with you. I'm looking at the pictures, and I haven't been on the board for a ton of time and given that much input, because for me it's been like learning, taking it in, and things of that nature. But I have personally gone through zoning things myself and experienced this, and I do. It sucks to like have built something first before kind of looking at the codes, but it is the reason why it exists. And so, that's unfortunate that it was already built, but I am in agreement that the difference between a 4-foot and a 5-foot, maybe wouldn't matter as much. I know the applicant's reasons for why, but I do feel like in agreement that it does open up more cases of just like, well, hey, you gave him a variance for that. Why wouldn't you do it for us? And I do think it's important to stay consistent, and for that to be a pretty extreme to overturn it, or have the encumbrances of the land or the circumstance.
Any other commentary from the board, or are we ready to proceed to a motion on this request?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Mike.
I move that the request for a variance of Village Code 225 sub 8 sub B sub 2 to allow installation of a 5-foot fence in the front yard at residential property 4100 North Ardmore Avenue be denied.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Okay, so the motion there is for the variance the request to be denied. So voting yes means yes to deny. No would be to grant the request. So Toya, can you call a vote, please?
Yes. Cara Espera,
Aye.
Michael Polson,
Aye.
Wendy Smith,
Aye.
Cole Heinrich.
Aye.
Motion carried 4-0.
All right, so pursuant to our vote, the request for variance has been denied. Thank you, regardless, Mr. Parker, for joining us and giving us your perspective. We certainly appreciate it.
Appreciate the time, gang. I guess my question would be, if I may ask questions, is the path forward from here? So
Inspector Burris, do you have a approach that you can advise Mr. Parker, perhaps offline?
Yes, so essentially the notice of correction or denial of the building permit stands as is. And if you, so we would work with you in respect to like a timeline for modifying the fence. No one no one expects it to be done, by, say, February 1st. So we'll work with you in respect to a timeline, but the idea would be that we will be looking to see that the fence be lowered.
Copy that. Perhaps we can pick this up offline in an email chain and work through timeline, obviously with winter here and just my work
Yes.
schedule. But appreciate it, gang. Certainly good insight for me.
Having no other items on our agenda for this evening, I believe that we can conclude tonight's proceedings. Thank you all for attending. Toya, do you need anything else from us?
I just need a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Okay, I second that motion. Hearing no objections to
Okay.
that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you and have a good night, everyone.
Hey, guys.
Good night.
Good night. Good night.
Adjourned at 6:01.